Hey y'all, welcome to Weekend Warrior Wednesday, part inspiration, part group therapy, entirely for realtors. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about hurricanes and how they affect real estate. And my special guest today is my special guy, my favorite lender and favorite human, my husband Manny. Welcome, honey.
Thank you for having me. I think this is like third or fourth episode. It took you so long to have me as a guest. I'm a little hurt by it, but that's fine.
I have bigger plans for you, my friend. Okay. Bigger plans. Okay, but I thought in the wake of this horribly devastating Hurricane Ian, this was definitely something that we should talk about, especially from an aspect of lending in addition to real estate. So thank you for being here today with us.
No problem. I think this is probably maybe the 10th, 11th, 12th named hurricane that hit landfall in Florida, at least a Category 1 since I've been lending. And so, they're all a little different based on, where they make landfall, which counties are listed as FEMA disaster areas. But this one, it felt like it affected most of Florida.
It did. It was super devastating. And first off, we want to sincerely wish everyone, just our hearts go out to you. I cannot believe the South Florida devastation. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah, I mean, we have some people that barely knew there was a hurricane. We had other friends and clients who lost everything. So, for people who were majorly affected, our hearts and prayers have been with you. It's kind of weird. Amanda and I were without, power and water, with a family of 6 for, the better part of 5 days.
We didn't have internet or cell service or power or water, but
we camp a lot, so we're used to doing that. And so it didn't really affect us too negatively. But by the time we got power and internet service and everything back, and we could go on social media and see friends who, were
flooding and oh my god, like people up to their nightstands with water.
So my heart. I know that the great thing about Florida is there's a lot of great communities, and I've seen friends of ours who've come together, especially in the real estate community, that just really warms my heart to know that not only do we have great neighbors, especially here in Volusia County, but just kind of everywhere, just seeing some of the friends and family who've come together to help people. It's been amazing how selfless people are when it really comes down to it. So don't want to make, we want to educate people about real estate and mortgages. That's what Amanda's doing here, but thought we'd be remiss if we didn't at least, tell everybody we are thinking about them. Life goes on. Some people are dealing with things more important today than real estate.
Oh my gosh.
And so for those of you, again, our thoughts and prayers are with you. But for those of you who have real estate transactions,
who are ready to kind of know what the game plan is, and maybe you've never experienced this before or just have questions about it.
I think the last time was 2017. Was the last time I think we
with
had
Irma,
with Irma was the last time, and that in the Central Florida region was a lot of rain, not a ton of damage, but a lot of trees, but not a lot of property damage. Definitely not the insurance claims we're going to see that we have coming up here. But so if those of you who've only been in the industry, less than 4 years, maybe have never had to go through a named storm, and today hopefully we can educate you guys on some of the things that will happen.
Exactly. Well, to that point, let's start with sellers, and then we'll kind of get into your realm with buyers and financing. Hopefully, listing agents, prior to the storm coming, you took down those trajectories, those listing signs. Please, hopefully you did. And so then that means this week, now that we're kind of getting back to normal-ish, you are making your rounds and you're touching base with your sellers, and you are going and hanging those listing signs again. When you're out there hanging the listing sign, or if you're not personally doing it, but someone on your team or your sign person, make sure that they do kind of like an overall check for you for the state of the property itself. It always helps to have, an unbiased opinion. Obviously, when it happens to your home, you're completely devastated, completely. But as a professional, as a listing agent, it is your job and your duty to assess how it's looking, and then obviously speak with your sellers. Maybe your seller's disclosure might need to be updated, especially if you've had any flooding or any kind of thing like that. That's definitely got to be addressed in that seller's disclosure. But let's talk about water damage in general. Manny, how does that affect financing?
So water damage has some different areas of financing. So the first thing that we look at, if the actual hurricane affected your area, the first thing we have to do, Amanda, is we're actually notified by FEMA, and you can go on FEMA's website to see if the county, they do it by county, if the county that your listing is in, or the home that you're buying is in, or the home that you're financing is in, is registered as a natural disaster area. And so they list all the counties. If the home in question is listed in that county, then yeah, that's an area that we want to be more concerned about, because some extra things will happen to that. But as far as water damage, what we experience typically in financing is two types of water damage. We have damage from standing water, which can be a problem, or damage from leaks. Either one, when it comes to financing, as long as the water damage did not destroy property. For example, in one of our properties, we had water damage coming in from the ceiling, but we were able to catch it with a bucket before the water damage buckled the floors. So really, once we put the bucket down, there's a little hole in the drywall, for where the ceiling came in at. But other than that, there isn't really true damage. So there was some water intrusion, but no lasting damage. So if you're financing a home like that, there's no problem there. You've got some...
Well, how about like in the case of our ceiling damage? Because in my memory, as the mortgage mama, no naked walls, no naked wires, no naked floors. So I know that we have, a bunch of naked walls.
Well, if you have
the drywall.
Yeah, so if you're doing a government loan like FHA, VA, USDA, these loans might have some problems with that drywall.
Right.
So they could have a problem with the hole. And so, if they came in and saw that potentially could be a problem. Conventional financing, probably not. So when the dust settles, when the water is removed, even if you have standing water, once the water recesses, really what you're left with is really damage. What damage is left over? And so if you're looking around, if you're not going to make an insurance claim, if there's so little damage it's probably going to be okay to pass a Fannie Mae or conventional type of financing.
Right.
If you're looking at making an insurance claim, there's probably significant damage, and there's probably going to be a question with any lender at that stage. But when it comes to water, Amanda, it's not the water intrusion, it's the damage the water leaves behind once the water's all gone.
Amen.
And so really when it comes to financing, so conventional financing, we don't care if you have hardwood floors and the floor's all buckled. Not really a concern unless we felt that there's so much buckling that it negatively affected the value of the home. But as far as property condition, conventional, no problem. FHA, VA, USDA financing, you might have some more problems with maybe not the flooring as much as maybe the broken drywall.
Exposed walls or walls or anything like that.
Correct.
And we'll get to insurance claims in a minute. But how about another biggie is fences? I know we lost our fence at our Daytona commercial location for Home Team.
So it goes back to a lot with lending is all about value and what kind of value we place on things. What I saw a lot of the typical damage was, again, small sections of fencing down. In most cases, small sections of fencing being down due to trees or just wind, almost no financing is going to have a problem with that. So, in my world, if I have 2 or 3 sections of your fence blown over, we're not going to probably stop financing based on that.
Okay.
There's not enough value destroyed or damaged to make it a problem. Fannie Mae, conventional financing, we'll say, is 0 problems at all. And most of your government financing, FHA, VA, USDA, most lenders are not going to have a problem with that. Now, if you're on acreage and you have, 800, 900 linear feet of fence blown over, you might have some value questions. But overall, fencing down isn't going to negatively affect financing. I bet you might have some buyers, though, right, that would probably may not want to buy a house if the fencing was down.
Right, or they might just want that to be addressed. And that comes with planning, and we'll talk about that in just a second. The biggest thing, and I know with Irma, it was huge, at least in Volusia County. But with Ian, the trees and the debris that are left in a yard. Yeah. So, like from a listing agent standpoint, I know it's crazy right now. Like those people, the tree guys are probably working like 24/7.
And so right now, if you think about trying to get anything fixed in the state of Florida in the next 6 months is going to be difficult. Everybody's going to charge. Everybody's going to charge a premium, and that's less gouging and more supply and demand.
Right.
So if I have a tree guy that'll normally take care of a 36-inch round tree for $1,000 for me, it's going to be a lot more expensive now. Why? Because he's got 100 people who need that tree cut right now, and so. it's going to be more expensive. So, you know, on our properties, we'll wait a little bit, right? We'll wait for the price of tree guys to come down a little bit.
Right, because we're not listing them. So.
We're not listing a home. They're not negatively affecting the properties in any way. But, you know, obviously, if you got your home on the market, you might view differently.
I 100% agree with that. And I know this sounds crazy, but the market is shifting. And so I am of the opinion that the sooner that you can get your beautiful listing back to being a beautiful listing, the better. And if that means a little sweat equity yourself, going out there and helping. I know so many of my realtor partners roll up their sleeves and go out there and help their sellers all the time. I mean, it's a relationship business after all, and sometimes you have to do that. But
word to the wise, trees are heavy, and completely soaked trees are even heavier. So, you know, not always the best, unless you have experience cutting big trees. Leave the big trees to experts. They're dangerous. You know, we have some hunting property in Georgia. I've seen, you know, unexperienced people cut big trees. They get very, very heavy. They can be very damaging. So some of the trees, if they're big enough, I mean, may have to hire a professional. But the little stuff, you know, again, when it comes to financing, things like down trees in yards, we really typically do not care about at all.
Right.
There's nothing in FHA or VA or conventional financing that says that you're not allowed to have a down tree in your house, as long as the tree is maybe not blocking the driveway or blocking access to the home. We don't.
As long
really
as it's
care.
Not on the roof.
Correct. Yes. Yeah, we're talking about down trees in the yard.
Right.
If you have a tree on the roof or hitting any part of the house, that's going to be a problem.
Well, let's talk about that, because that's typically when you're going to see your insurance claim. So if you are a seller and you have an active insurance claim, how does that affect financing? Does it affect financing?
So
what's the game plan?
There's actually, you know, we typically look at clear title. So in financing, if we have clear title, we're going to move forward with that. Now, be beneficial maybe at some time in the near future to get an insurance agent in here, because I know what way, shape, or form want to pretend to be one. But typically when it comes to insurance claims, there's no lien on the house, right? And if no work has been started, there's no, you know, notice of commencement or anything. So technically speaking, insurance claims don't stop financing. But as we said from the beginning, if you have damage significant enough to your house, whether you're the buyer buying the house or the person selling the house, and an insurance claim is being considered, that's probably going to be an area of concern for any lender. Remember, it's our job to protect the buyer. We want to protect our own personal investment as the lender, right? We don't want to loan you $500,000 on a home that has $100,000 in repairs on it, because the value that I've given you may not be in the home anymore.
Right.
And so if you have a tree on a roof, that's really Pandora's box of what could be under that tree when you lift the roof. I've seen big, heavy trees hit houses, and when they take the tree off the house, there's not even a leak in the roof.
Right.
I've also seen small trees hit houses, and when the tree is removed, the entire ceiling is opened up. Right. And so with a tree sitting on a house, maybe let me jump in here real quick. Every lender is going to require a post-hurricane inspection of some kind. So an appraiser is the eyes and ears for the lender, right? Lenders don't drive to homes and check them out. That's what the appraiser does for us. He's our eyes and our ears. So if the inspection has already been done, the appraisal inspection, the appraiser's already been to the property, then there is no need for another inspection. Or if he's not been to the property, there's no need, because the appraiser is going to go to the property and do the eyes and ears inspection, and he's going to tell us as the lender if there's problems. Where you have what's called a re-inspection, which is when the appraiser has to go back out. If the appraiser, our notification said, if the appraiser was at the home prior to the date in which the hurricane hit, and I think in this case that was Tuesday, right? So if the appraiser was at the home Tuesday or before to do the appraisal, he's going to be required to go back out to the property again,
right,
to do another inspection. Let me, for layman out there, he's going to need to take some photos of the house, both sides, front and back. And if there's a pool home, possibly the pool with the screen enclosure too. Why is that? Well, because we need to make sure that the investment that we're about to loan that $500,000 on is sound and that there's no damages to the property. Now, what's the negative effect to your buyer if a re-inspection is required? Well, at a home team, I'm fortunate because we're actually a servicer, so we service our loans. So all we're required to do is I sent one of my employees out, you know, big shot to John Sharano.
He took the mortgage mobile and he filled it up with gas.
Big shout out to John Sharano, who took the entire day yesterday and was everywhere from Kissimmee to Ormond Beach, doing all of our re-inspections, which was no additional cost to our clients at all. Just another benefit of working with a local lender. But if you're not servicing your own loans, a lot of lenders are going to require the appraiser to go do that re-inspection,
and that is usually like $200.
$100 to $300, anywhere from $100 to $300. Now, the bigger killer, Amanda, could be the time. Maybe $300 isn't a deal breaker to the buyer or the seller, but there's a time issue.
Yeah, if that appraiser has like 40 houses he's got to go back out to, like when are you on that? What number are you on that list?
Yeah, so
and does that delay the closing? So that's a great. Let's get right into how it affects people that are under contract, buyers and sellers, technically, that are under contract. How can we mitigate some of the damage, and especially from an appraisal standpoint, how does that affect everything? I mean, God, you think about rates, so many things. So let's start at the top.
So again, if the appraiser went out at the property Tuesday or before, there's going to be a reinspection of some kind. If the lender is able to do it on their own, it's probably, ours was super easy. We did them all in one day. It was a long day for John.
But we got back after dark.
Correct. But he did them all in one day. Yeah. That was every property we had under contract that already had an appraisal done on it. And we had actually 0 properties with actual lasting damage that would delay financing. So we were very fortunate. Something tells me our South Florida branches are probably not as fortunate in that area. So you have to allow for time, Amanda, for it, because most people are going to require that appraiser to go back out.
Right.
So the appraiser is going to have time, additional cost. Again, like I said, even if the $100 to $300 for the reinspection isn't a killer for the buyer or seller, the time could be. So what happens when we add time? Well, we have rate locks that can expire. We have contingencies and renegotiations drawn up.
So wait, you skipped over rate locks, and I know that's like the big buzzword. The rates everybody's bananas about the rates. They're still historically low, but yes, they're much higher than they were last year. So there's not like a lender freebie to hurricane. So we're going to extend. That's not a thing.
No, unfortunately, in most cases, the rate lock expiration is a rate lock expiration, and so if you're closing and rate lock is expiring today.
Now, why is that? Because rates are driven by the entire United States. It's not just Florida. I wish that we could only do our own rates.
Yeah. So the bond market does not wait even for Irma, and as the bond market and the market moves, it shifts the rates everywhere. So, again, we are heavily affected by this in Florida. It's been our whole world for a week, but people in New York, they don't care about Irma.
Right.
People on the West Coast not interested in Irma. They have bond markets and rates and hedges, and so no, your rate lock is your rate lock. Now, there are some weird policies going out there. Some lenders will only allow a small rate lock. Some lenders will not allow any rate lock extensions. Some will allow rate lock extensions, but they're very expensive. These are things where you got to get in touch with the loan officer. This is, Amanda, we always talk about teamwork and why it's so vital to use local people as well as people that are familiar with each other. So, you got to have a buyer's agent involved, you got a listing agent involved, you got a title agent involved, you got a lender involved. I mean, if I'm a buyer, so I'm in touch with all these people as the lender, right? I'm in touch with everybody. We had a closing, actually, that was trying to go down the day after the hurricane.
Oh, God.
And so we had somebody closing with Home Team Title, and they wanted to close in a time which nobody in the downtown DeLand area had power.
No internet, no power, I don't even know how they communicated with.
Most of the professionals in the room that day had not taken a shower in 24 hours, and you could tell we were all in basically, t-shirts and shorts.
We had
and
our headlamps and our
correct
hats on and stuff, yeah.
So one thing I will say that, although the hurricane might cause some delays and maybe an additional cost for re-inspections, hopefully if there's no major delays, we just have to be, fair and honest with each other that this was a natural disaster. Nobody asked for this. This is just something that happens sometimes, especially, the pros and cons of living in a beautiful state like Florida. California has the earthquakes. We have the occasional hurricane. But we have to be respectful of each other professionally, because I had one of the professionals in the room that day who literally, they small children, no running water, they didn't know what was going on with schools, they hadn't heard from family in South Florida. They had bigger things. They were still working, trying to get that transaction done for that realtor.
Right, just to communicate effectively and say, hey, listen, we don't have a way to print the package. I think that think an agent asked them to go to the police station.
Yeah, she asked us if they could go to the police station to print the package.
I think we can wait.
and I appreciate the gusto and the want to in the agent. I love a problem solver. The problem is that none of us felt comfortable going to the police station the day after a hurricane to bother them with printing a real estate package.
Right. There are more important things than
this. Actually, the transaction did close that day. Wonderful title agents and realtors all got together.
Were they able to fund it?
They were not able to fund that day. That was not a problem of us as the lender or the title company. It was actually a drawback on the buyer who was not able to get all of her money to closing that day. Because remember, her local bank was closed.
Yeah.
So, I think we just kind of say this to just be respectful of the professionals around each other,
or people,
because some people that you're going to deal with, maybe the insurance agent is in South Florida, so maybe that insurance agent, the most important thing in their world is not binding that policy today. It might be in our world, but in their world, maybe the most important thing is making sure that they have clean drinking water today. So I don't want to get too mushy on the hurricane side, but real estate's important. Transactions closing on time are important. But again, people in Florida have some bigger things. So, but to get back to the actual transaction closing part, Amanda, re-inspections are going to be a requirement. Getting with the lender to see if do I have to extend my rate lock if I extend my closing date. How about, let me talk to you on the real estate side. So you actually had one of your realtors had an actual contract expire over the hurricane. I just spoke with him this morning. The listing agent on the other side was very cool. They got the contracts executed, but there's some question. What if you had a contract that expires and you don't have any power to get in communication with the other agent?
Right. Again, it all comes down to communicating in the best way that you can, being a professional about it, and giving some credence to some things that are outside of our control. I mean, force of nature. Maybe someday we will learn how to control those storms, but until that happens, you have to use your common sense and also your compassion and your heart, and be a professional and stick to what you guys have agreed upon. But if it's something as simple as extending a listing agreement or even a contract for that matter, you work together with the professionals, and as a consumer, obviously yield to your representative agent. So, and as an agent, take a breath, take a beat, calm down, don't chicken little it, as I always say. Just remember that you're there to be the leader. That is your circus, those are your monkeys, but you're the ringleader, and it is your job to be the voice of reason and the voice of calm and the consummate professional to guide people through this, very, if not devastating, certainly very inconvenient for everyone.
Because even the best case scenario, if the home, I'm sure if I were a buyer buying a piece of real estate, when I woke up in the morning, we just owned some real estate. And
we just drove to everything,
we just drove to every single property we owned.
Did you see that meme? It was like folks in Florida driving around looking at houses like they do for Christmas lights. Yeah. People don't drive around for Christmas lights anymore. They don't do that here, at least. I don't know.
Well, it's not Christmas lights, but I did drive around town looking at the damage. I won't lie.
Well, honestly, we had nothing else to do. We had literally...
Yeah. But if I woke up that morning and I was a home buyer in my dream house, I don't know the condition of it. You've got buyers that are concerned about the property condition. Mm-hmm. You've got buyers concerned about the contractual obligations.
Yeah, the deadlines of the contract. So again, those deadlines still stick. So that means you still have to open yourself up to the negotiating of it all. Like if you're outside of those parameters of your financing contingency or your inspection period or any of that stuff, and you need to extend them to account for the damages or, again, to mitigate anything within in the wake of the storm, that is your job as a professional to address it and move forward with it.
Yeah, so again, if your lock expires, you still have to address it with the loan officer. Again, everything's up for negotiation, right? I mean, it really at this stage, if we had a property that was damaged by a storm, and the reinspection showed there was damaging by the storm. And we say, hey, listen, we have to order reinspection if it was required by the appraiser to be done. Maybe that takes 4 or 5 days. Again, if your contract were to expire during that time, you would have to renegotiate a new closing date.
Correct.
Maybe a new financing contingency because obviously if there's damage to the property, but really, doesn't that fall on the seller? Because is that seller really ready, willing, and able to go to closing if there is damage to the property?
Obviously not.
Right?
It's not in the same condition with which it was marketed.
Correct. I mean, if I'm a buyer and there's a tree, even if I'm a buyer and there's down fences, maybe if I don't have the down fences repaired, I at least probably want money to repair, because you own the home. I haven't bought the home yet.
Right.
So if your fence blew down during the hurricane, that's still your fence, not my fence until tomorrow.
Correct. Well, and to that point, remember we had one of our people had they were like, we need to close early. We're going to close before the storm. That's a choice. That is one choice. I personally probably would not choose that.
They did ask us to rush a closing. Closing was on Friday. They made us push the closing to Tuesday. We pushed the closing to Tuesday per their request. And
then what happened?
They had an insurance claim on their brand new house.
Because they had a giant tree on their house?
Yeah. So they did take possession. So now it's their house. But in most cases, people hadn't taken possession. That's still the seller's house.
Right.
So maybe some things that I would do, you can renegotiate maybe the cost of having the fence repaired. Right. So, again, down fences for financing. We'll still finance the home. It doesn't negatively affect the value of the home or the functionality of the home. But I could see as a buyer, I wouldn't want to buy a house with a down fence unless you were going to recoup. Even a big tree. These big trees, which are thousands of dollars right now to have removed out of a yard, I could just go back and renegotiate the cost of that, right? Couldn't I just say, hey, I'm a buyer, but I don't want to wait 2 weeks to have the tree removed. You just pay me $1,000 at closing.
Yes, but to that point, because this is what drives me bananas about people in general, but the arbitrary pricing for what things cost has got to end today. Let's all agree, oh, you got to give me $50,000 for that. What? No, let's get some quotes. Let's see how much it is. Yeah. And it's not necessarily the realtor's full-time job to find you 10 different quotes. We've got to work together as a human.
A lot of arbitrary numbers.
If they're not going to give me blah, 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 it's well, then buy.
So it is for our clients, at least, it is, we typically say, hey, you need a quote or two. So if you're going to buy a house with a tree down in it, and you want the seller to compensate you for you removing that tree instead of having them wait to remove the tree.
Provide 3 quotes and
at least an estimate
correct.
Or 2.
Yeah.
I understand if maybe 3 right now might be difficult, but at least something in writing where we have seen some buyers and sellers just draw up arbitrary numbers. And that
might be fine too. And that's what's so beautiful, what's so fun about real estate is that there's not necessarily a cake recipe for how things go. Every home is different, every seller is different, every buyer is different. It's a similar process, but you never know what you're going to get. It's like a box of chocolates. But if that is what your agent and their agent are negotiating, and you're cool with it, fine. But do this for me. Those days are definitely gone when it comes to natural disasters.
I also see that a shift in the market is making it. Sellers,
it's getting more balanced.
4 months ago, the sellers were like, sell this house with a tree right in it, right?
Right. It was a tree. That was the house. Yeah. You're welcome. It was $1 million.
Yeah. So, and today with the market shifting, I think sellers are a little bit more understanding that they don't want to put these homes back on the market.
Right.
It might be
a bird in the hand is really good right now.
Correct.
Right.
So to kind of recap on that, small minor repairs, probably, even though it may not stop financing, maybe the realtor might need to go in there, and if financing can still go forward and the buyer is still ready to buy and the seller still wants to sell, maybe a simple negotiation, right, Amanda? Maybe get an estimate of what the repairs need to be.
Yeah.
I got an estimate the other day to clean up my yard for $200. I thought that was a great deal. And it's a big, almost 1 acre property in Daytona with big giant trees. Yeah, it was $200.
I hope you took that.
I did take that.
Okay.
And I got that estimate in about an hour from requesting it. So there are good people. Not everything needs a skilled laborer. If you have some workmanship, then, carpentry, more skilled yard work, I just got a guy. And so for an estimate of $200, he's going to clean the whole yard, and he's going to try to do it in 24 hours. So these kind of things can be done. They don't all delay real estate transactions. From a financing side, again, I'm going to go back to re-inspection by the appraiser or the lender. It can cost you anywhere from nothing. We did ours for free for our clients, but it could cost you up to $300, and it could set you back anywhere from 1 day to 2 weeks, depending on how much time it takes for that appraiser to go back and re-inspect. If there are no damages, what's a re-inspection? Again, it's just the appraiser or lender taking a picture of all 4 sides of the houses, right? If there's a pool, we want a picture of the pool and the hopefully still intact screen enclosure. With those photos, we're moving forward with financing.
Right.
If there is something in the photos that concerns the lender, maybe something like a tree on the house, maybe the screen enclosure is gone,
What if they have a clear to close?
Again, even my clear to closes do require a reinspection, Amanda. So I'm ready to loan you the money, but before I loan you the money, I just want to make sure
the house is still there.
The house is there. We do loan on manufactured homes quite often right now.
Yeah.
And you can imagine how one might feel before I loan. And I am financing manufactured homes for $300,000 and $400,000. Manufactured homes are not what they used to be. We have some high-end manufactured homes. Yeah,
absolutely.
We have friends who have a manufactured home on the right on the beach in
the intercoastal.
Yeah,
like
at Key West area. Yeah. So I mean, there are some beautiful manufactured homes, but I need to go make sure it's still there.
Correct.
So whether it be a manufactured home or a brick-built house, we still have to take pictures of all the sides. We have to make sure it's still there. And so, again, if there are major repairs, then the repairs have to be completed. Then another inspection is done. So if there is a tree on the house or if the screen enclosure is gone, the repairs have to be made. Another inspection.
And then they have to go back and show that it's been completed. And that's not something that, so the appraiser has to come back out again?
Well, yeah.
Well, depending on who the lender is.
Depending on who the lender, either somebody from the lending institution or the appraiser has to go back again. So you have the initial appraisal. You pay for that. Right, $600 maybe. Then you have a reinspection after the hurricane. Let's say there's damage. That reinspection, it's in the appraiser out, $100 to $300. If there is damage, you have to have the damage repaired or, then send somebody back out again. So if you spent $600 for your initial, $300 for reinspection, and $300 to make sure that damage had been since repaired, you are spending upwards of $1,000 between your appraisal and reinspection.
Right. Where I would, maybe if I was the listing agent, talk to my sellers about that. But again, every contract is every
contract being negotiable. Really, what we're just trying to express to people is that
it's going to take time.
It could take time, and it could take money.
Right.
And so if you have time and money involved, these are two killers in real estate, right? The two things that kills a real estate transaction. I need more time, or something's going to cost me more money than anticipated.
Right. And so be prepared for the extra time and be prepared for the extra expense and have patience and be a kind human being. Kindness is magic. I know it's backwards on here, but be a compassionate, kind human throughout this process. And there are more important things than real estate. But your real estate purchase is absolutely important. Yeah. And so the key from a real estate professional standpoint is to, again, assess every listing that you have and everybody that's under contract. Work diligently with the co-professionals in the deal, everyone from, again, the lender to the co-agent to the insurance people.
And then lastly, like I said, if there is damage enough for insurance claims, that's what we'll see, I think, the biggest and most significant drawback in the real estate market is when somebody had so much damage, a claim is made. It's not that the lender, I don't care as a lender, I probably won't even be aware of it as a lender. But what's really going to be the problem is the person selling the house has a damaged house. Probably the person buying the house doesn't want to buy the house in that current state of condition. And so what you have now is the seller needs to get hold by the insurance company, and that right now, at such a major storm, is going to take time.
Oh my gosh.
In order to make a claim, have your claim approved by the insurance company, and then potentially make the repairs if the lender or buyer is requiring those repairs to be made. That is where the significant time is. That's when we're going to talk about months delays. And then what we could see is we saw this in past hurricanes, a certain number of buyers will not want to make that wait, may not be able to make that wait.
Well, they might jump to a different house. I mean, depending, again, if rates they're crazy right now. They are changing every hour, it seems like. Yeah. But what about things like escrow holdbacks? I mean, is that still a thing? Can that be done? Probably not for a roof.
So an escrow holdback, for those of you not familiar with an escrow holdback, that's when the lender approves a certain dollar amount to be held in escrow, typically by the title company closing the transaction. That would help offset any of the damages or costs. For example, if there is a tree down and the tree, needed to be removed for financing sake, let's just say that were the case. Buyer or seller agrees to put $1,000 into escrow holdback. We allow the closing to happen, and that allows that buyer to take that money in escrow and make the repair after closing. Amanda, the escrow holdbacks are typically done for very minor repairs. We might do them for AC systems, because that's not that's not affecting the actual, it might be hot in your house, but the livability is not negatively affected too much. But a hole in your roof, because of the future damages that it can cause. Yeah. So for example, let's say I would try to do an escrow holdback. Well, how much am I doing the escrow holdback for? The cost to remove the tree? the cost of the tree and the repaired roof. Now, what if, while you're waiting to have your roof repaired, there's more water intrusion into the interior of the home?
What if there's mold?
Yeah, so it's really hard to determine how much I need to do an escrow holdback for. And at that stage, to be honest with you, as a lender, I might actually, as a professional, just go to my buyer and say, I don't feel comfortable having you move forward, even if I could do an escrow holdback on this particular, because we can't assess the real damage.
Right. Well, and that's really what it boils down to. You assess and then you address. You do not chicken little. The sky is not falling. There are no real estate emergencies, although, a disaster or natural is emergency. You just assess and address and, again, make a plan together.
Yeah. Educated. We've experienced, with all the hurricanes we've been through in our real estate careers, good title company, good buyer's agent, good listing agent, good lender,
great buyers, insurance people that communicate. We love you guys. Yes.
Buyers and sellers who are understanding of the scenario. There's very little. I can't remember through the 12 hurricanes we've been through since being in real estate here in Florida. I can't remember a scenario in which we couldn't navigate around.
Right.
Almost every scenario has a solution. Maybe the worst case solution is the property was so damaged in the storm that is no longer a viable option for that buyer.
Right.
Listen, from a lending standpoint, I'm not emotional about properties, and I understand buying and selling property is emotional, but I'm just not emotional about it. Guess what? There's no one home that is the perfect home. There is another perfect home out there for the buyers, and calm realtors, calm lenders, educating buyers and sellers. Because again, if the buyer doesn't want to buy, that seller's probably got insurance claims to worry, but they've got lots of things on their hands. Selling the home may not be the most important thing in their life anymore.
Right.
Because they probably got, furniture damages. They've probably got interior property damage. So, I don't think that with good professionals that we're going to see too many people walk away from every transaction, right? Most transactions are salvageable.
Right.
The few that we lose, listen, again, from the lender, I namely deal with buyers. I just tell my buyer it's a blessing they didn't close before the storm. If the property was severely damaged, what if the buyer did close on the home, and then they moved in and then it was damaged? They'd have a brand new home that's damaged. It's their new baby.
Right. And if you try to look at the positive, what if that house that you have listed actually did great through the storm?
Yeah.
I mean, now you are really selling a very awesome product. So
we were actually getting more inventory. This will take some inventory. South Florida is a completely different beast. South Florida is a whole thing on its own. Again, not a market that I spend a ton of time in financing. We do some things in Jupiter and Stewart. We have some properties there, none of which were damaged during this storm. But if you look at that west coast of South Florida, there's a lot going on there. But again, for our clients, check on your rate locks, check on your contracts, check on your contingencies.
Check your contingency periods. Get yourself organized.
A meeting of the minds between buyer's agent, buyer, and loan officer is not a bad idea. A quick Zoom call maybe between everybody to make sure that you have a game plan. If you had a closing last week, it got delayed, you're probably in the midst of that. You have a closing this week, and it's looking to get delayed. Again, contractual closing date, lock expirations. These are some of the major things.
Also, just right now, I mean, we literally just got some of our cell service and all that stuff back. Try various ways of communicating before you have a hissy fit.
Because maybe the profession you're trying to contact doesn't have cell service. We just got ours back a couple of days before. So there are some means there by which, and the great thing is a lot of people are in teams. So typically somebody in the team will have it. So Amanda, we went over re-inspections, we went over locks and contractual obligations. What else can I tell you about? Because in the world of financing, I think we went over most of the big things. A lot of the things, from a lending standpoint, unless the property is damaged, if it's just in the yard or a tree down or maybe a fence, we don't care. If the property itself is damaged, we might delay financing, but if the property is damaged, as we said, you got buyers and sellers that are probably going to delay the closing themselves. So outside of that, like I said, keep a cool head and try to keep, if the buyer loves the house, try to stay under contract, try to help them close.
Assess, address, and plan. I think that's it. Thank you. All right, y'all. Well, thank you so much for tuning in, and look forward to seeing you next week. Bye-bye.